Before I begin, a few thanks are in order. Thanks, first of all, to David Green. David, you have the vision to take EMET to the next level. Where are you, David? David, yes, thank you. He's the chairperson of our board, and he has been an incredible inspiration and worker. Carol Silvermitz, where are you? Carol? Carol, are you here? You're probably seeing to something somewhere. Carol, you are the adhesive tape that makes EMET adhere together, let alone my psyche. And you're more than my executive assistant, you're my best friend. Thank you, Carol. Okay. I also want to thank Kyle Scheidler and Adam Turner, my wonderful and brilliant, overworked and underpaid staff. Okay. And finally, a huge thank you goes out to Eitan Laor, who's brought with him Congressman David Rivera. And I want to thank him for coming and for all the help that Eitan and American Principles PAC has given to us and to inspire other people to work in the right direction for the United States. I want to thank Congressman Brad Sherman, a former honoree of EMET who has done tremendous amounts of work on the Iranian sanctions bills, whether or not you agree that they've helped. They have been certainly one weapon in our armor that we can use against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And Brad Sherman has been tremendous help in that. The moving force. I want to thank Congressman Trent Franks from Arizona, a former honoree. Congressman Franks is a profile in courage. He is amazing. He is right on target about everything. And as strongly and as passionately as any one of us in this room cares about the survival of Israel, Congressman Franks does as well. And finally, I want to give a strong shout out of thanks to Jill Gerstenfeld, who spent hours on creating the beautiful tribute journal to Senator Mark Kirk, who we all wish a speedy recovery to. Mark Dorff, who spent days and days on the phone helping to make this the most successful event we've ever had. Our wonderful friends, Len and Michelle Leader. Rabbi and Mrs. Stephen Bars, who have been always on the right track about everything. Karen Cohn, Michal Green, Izzy Teitelbaum, Marlene Ayala, and the fabulous Florida contingent. That is here, of course, with Congressman Alan West. All right. Yay. And of course, a special thank you goes to Doris Leeds, who once again this year contributed the amazing awards, and this year also contributed these beautiful pins that we shall all proudly wear from now on. Thank you all for rolling up your sleeves to pitch in and to help. I cannot thank you enough. It used to be, if I took a vacation for a month, I'd come back and I'd basically come back to the same old Middle East. Today, we're looking at seismic shifts in the political landscape in the Middle East of tectonic proportions. On Monday morning, we woke up to the dawn of the new Middle East with the news that Mohammed Morsi of the Freedom and Justice Party, which is neither free nor just, of the Muslim Brotherhood, won the elections by a thin margin. He had allegedly defeated Ahmad Shafiq, who represented the old guard of Hosni Mubarak. Egypt, which shares the longest border with Israel, has been relatively quiet since 1979. It has been an icy cold peace, but it has been a peace nonetheless. In the last 16 months since Mubarak was driven from power, we've seen attacks on American NGOs, attacks on the Israeli embassy, a very well-orchestrated cross-border attack that resulted in the killing of 8 Israeli civilians last year, and just this week, the constant smuggling of goods, weapons, fighters, and people into the border of Gaza, mostly by the Bedouin population, and a heating up of the election rhetoric against Israel. The Muslim Brotherhood has said everything from, we will honor the Camp David Treaty with Israel, to, we will take it to a referendum, to, we cannot be held hostage by an outdated treaty. Seriously and honestly, we do not know what the future holds with Egypt. The internal society is severely polarized, and I expect a series of one volcanic eruption in response to another. The Arab Spring has issued in a very long, hot summer. We do know, however, that part of the Hamas wing of the Muslim Brotherhood's signature way of celebrating this victory was by the lobbing of more than 100 missiles into southern Israel from Gaza in the past several days. We also know that the Muslim Brotherhood, which was founded in 1928 in Egypt by Hassan al-Banna, who was a devotee of Adolf Hitler. And we do know that ever since the Camp David I Treaty in 1979, the United States has taken the Egyptian military from a C- Soviet-equipped military and fashioned it into an A+ American-equipped one. Ever since the events began in Tahrir Square over 2 years ago, now, EMET had been alone on Capitol Hill arguing that the time is way overdue for us to suspend or to cancel American military aid to Egypt. At least until we know what sort of government is put into place. Ladies and gentlemen, in this time of fiscal restraint, we have to ask ourselves, what sort of dividend has this $1.3 billion per annum investment brought us? Others have been arguing that we must continue our military support to Egypt. Their argument is that this gives us a seat at the table. I'm asking you, what leverage has this $1.3 billion a year brought us at this proverbial table? Has it made it more comfortable for American Western-style NGOs in Egypt? Has it resulted in a modification of the vitriol used against Israel or the United States? Has it resulted in guarantees that they will adhere not only to the letter, but to the spirit of the Camp David Accords? As I write these words, the United States has just concluded yet another round of the P5+1 negotiations with Iran, this time in Moscow. This is the third round of talks, which has succeeded in yet another wonderful breakthrough in the world of diplomacy, a fourth round of talks. All of this is playing precisely into the Iranians' hands, giving them exactly what they need, more time for their thousands of cylinders to rapidly spin and to further enrich uranium for their nuclear bomb project. President Obama has repeatedly said all options are on the table. Will all options still remain on the table after the Iranians have been granted sufficient time to complete its quest for a bomb and to bring them closer to their goal of wiping Israel off the map? When the president says he wants prevention rather than containment, does this refer to his desire to prevent the Iranians from crossing the threshold into nuclear capability, or rather to his desire to prevent the Israelis from striking out against Iran and protecting their shared existence? In Syria, we've been witnessing the systematic, brutal murder of close to 15,000 people at the hands of Bashar al-Assad. On February 23rd, 2011, President Obama said, and I quote, "The suffering and bloodshed is outrageous and it is unacceptable. So are threats and orders to shoot peaceful protesters and further punish the people. These actions violate international norms and every standard of common decency. This violence must stop. In a volatile situation like this one, it is imperative that the nations and peoples of the world speak with one voice, and that has been our focus." When I first heard these words, I was hoping that President Obama was referring to Syria. But of course, as we all now know, the president was not referring to Syria, but to Libya. If I were a Syrian watching the wanton butchery of Syrian men, women, and children at the hands of Bashar al-Assad, my feelings towards the United States might have grown quite sour by now. I'm delighted to have read in today's New York Times that the CIA is supplying weapons to the Syrian opposition, funded by Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. Let us hope it is not too little, too late. Yet, of course, there is one nation around the world that endures more opprobrium, more attempts at delegitimization in the United Nations and in the polite forums around the world, and that nation, of course, is the democratic state of Israel, the one place in the Middle East where any religious minority, be he Sunni, Shiite, or Coptic, Hindu, Buddhist, has the freedom to worship how he or she sees fit. This little tiny nation now has 90 to 100,000 missiles directed at it from every direction. Some 60,000 are now in the hands of Hamas and Hezbollah. In fact, some from the Libyan rebels have made their way to Israel's north into Hezbollah's hands. Finally, when the Palestinian Authority even refuses to sit down and negotiate with Israel, the Obama administration recently released another $192 million in aid to the Palestinians that Congress had frozen. Tommy Vietor, an administration spokesperson, said, "That is because the PA has lived up to all of the obligations under the roadmap, including an end to incitement." With all due respect, Mr. Vietor, one must ask, which PA exactly is he referring to? Is this the Parents Association? I'm sorry, this is not a joke. As those of us who have been monitoring the situation on the ground know, every single opportunity that the Palestinians can, they use every kind of media, textbook, radio and television show, newspapers, maps, so that they can systematically indoctrinate their people to a steady diet of incitement to hate the Israeli, the United States, the Christian, and the Jew, to poison their minds, to incite their children to martyrdom, and to condemn them to an early death, which is the worst kind of child abuse imaginable. They are aiming to abolish our history and our claim to the Jewish state of Israel, to eradicate Israel from the maps, such as this one, which I picked up when I was in Israel last fall, when I was in Judea and Samaria, or in the West Bank, if you choose, where they have the map of Israel and they have erased it, and they call this Palestine. Ladies and gentlemen, as long as they teach their children this, there will be no peace. That is why, when this statement was made by Mr. Vietor, we brought in Itamar Marcus from Palestinian Media Watch. This is what EMET does. EMET tells the truth. We educate, we analyze, we inform, so that our policymakers do not have to simply rely on the so-called balanced reporting of CNN, NPR, the New York Times, or the Washington Post to get their information. And we do this And we do this on Capitol Hill, directly in front of our policymakers and their staffers, where we have the most impact. Our educational efforts often result in moving policymakers to action, such as the letter that was authored by Congressman Joe Walsh, Republican from Illinois, and Brad Sherman, and signed by Democrat from California. I'm sorry. Howard Berman, I'm sorry, Brad Sherman, Democrat from California, and signed by 50 others, I think, including yourself, right? saying that the 1,027 terrorists that were released in exchange for Gilad Shalit, among them were some murderers of Americans. And these people that had American blood on their hands should be tried according to American law in American courts. Beyond that, we do something unique that no other organization that I know about has ever done before. Not only do we honor those rare and remarkable individuals who in their political careers have found the courage to stand up for Israel or to tell the truth about radical Islam when it is not always to do so, we find those amazingly courageous human beings who hail from the Muslim and Arab parts of the world and who have risked everything, including exclusion from their homes, from their family and their friends, and sometimes including even the risk of their very own lives in order to tell the truth. Tonight, that is why we are honored. Cynthia Farahat, who is here today from Egypt. I have not yet seen him, but Simon Dang, I hope he's arrived from New York, who has told the truth about the United Nations and the Darfur 3 conference, and Darfur 1, Durban 1, 2, and 3 conferences, and how they were supposed to be conferences against prejudice, and they have become carnivals of racism and hate against Israel. And that is exactly why we are honoring these wonderful members of Congress here today, Congressman Alan West. Right. And Senator Mark Kirk.